Welcome to a new episode of the Pull List Examiner. This is a special episode where I'm going to be looking at the top 10 comic book series of 2023. And you know, there have been some series that ended way at the beginning of 2023 and some that are continuing past into next year, but really I decided that if an issue came out last year, then that series is eligible to be on my top 10 list for the year. So I'm going to start with some honorable mentions and then we'll jump into the top 10 list. Let's start with some honorable mentions for last year. First, I'm going to look at the Scott Snyder series that came from Comixology. We've got 3 series that he released, all 3 in last year, but in print form. They actually came out in electronic form before that, but I still wanted to mention them because those were some fun reads. The most recent one was Canary, before that was Barnstormers, and then there was also the series Clear. All 3 of those, some fun stories to read, but really they were coupled with some amazing art. Clear had some great coloring, and you had the other 2 series with some very artistic, great art throughout. So if you haven't checked those out, I'd recommend it. Next on the honorable mentions is the Mark Millar verse that we got last year. Yeah, he came up with some epic comics that all culminated in this big game series. I give him a lot of credit for what he came up with last year. I know he's actually been critiquing the comic book industry, and yeah, I have to say it was some fun reads, whether it was Nightclub, Ambassadors, or that final big game series. He did a great job last year as well. And now just a few series I wanted to mention. They only had a couple issues come out last year, so I'm still kind of on the fence about whether or not they're going to make the top 10, but I did want to mention them. First is Batman Gargoyle of Gotham. Artwork, writing, amazing on this series. I probably should have put it on my top 10 list. Maybe it'll make it next year. But then also another Batman series was The City of Madness. Again, just amazing writing and art. This prestige format, black label from DC Comics for both of these series. Both were unique and something to take a look at if you're a Batman fan. And then there were some other series that only had a couple issues come out. First I'll mention is the Swamp Thing Green Hell series, which had amazing artwork by Doug Mahnke, but he got sick and they delayed it, and I can't remember if we only got 1 issue or 2 issues last year. I think it was 2 issues with the reprint of the first issue is I think what happened. So I think we did get 3 issues of this black label series from DC that takes a look at a futuristic John Constantine helping out a post-apocalyptic society that is being decimated by some Swamp Thing characters. And lastly, I wanted to mention we got issue 2 of A Vicious Circle. This series has to do with this time-traveling individual. As time shifts, so does the artwork. The artwork's done by Lee Bermejo, and it is an amazingly well done artistic book. With the amount of time and effort put into the artwork, I could definitely see why this is in a prestige format as well. This is coming from Boom Studios, and it's written by Mattson Tomlin, who I'm not super familiar with, but the writing is also done well. Interestingly, we got 1 issue in 2022 and 1 issue in 2023. Hopefully he can finish the series next year, and maybe then it'll make it on my top 10 list. Starting off my top 10 list for 2023 is going to be The Madness by AWA Comics. This is written by J. Michael Straczynski and has this interesting take on a superhero gone bad, or in this case gone mad, and it has been a really fun series. I think the artwork has been done well. Really though, the writing is what makes it shine. And if you take a look at what we got this year, we got a 6-issue series that will be wrapping up in that first month of January. We got the bulk of the series this year, and it has been a great read from one of my favorite publishers, AWA Comics. If you haven't checked this series out, it will probably be released in a graphic novel form, and at least historically speaking, AWA seems to put out $10 graphic novels, and if you can, I would recommend checking it out. Coming in at number 9 is Daredevil. This is the series that was written by Chip Zdarsky and wrapped up in, I think, the month of August. We got 14 total issues from Chip Zdarsky on what is an epic run from him. I really did like the series. If you go all the way back to when he first started writing, it was just a great, well-written series. This last arc that we got in the 14 issues was probably not as good as that first arc, but was still a good way to wrap up the series. And if you haven't checked out Chip Zdarsky's run of Daredevil, I would highly recommend it. And at number 8, we've got Incredible Hulk. This is written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, who has done some really good work on some other series this year as well, but his Incredible Hulk run has been probably, in my opinion, the best comic coming out at Marvel this year. If you haven't seen it yet, there was a preview issue that came out, and then we got the official issue official number 1 issue starting in June, and he has just given us this very fun arc that takes on a horror genre instead of your normal Hulk smash genre, and it has been an inner monologue battle between Bruce and the Hulk. Hulk doesn't want to let Bruce out, but does every so often, and it has been a great run so far, and hopefully into 2024 it will continue. At number 7, we've got Junkyard Joe. This is by the creative team of Jeff Johns and Gary Frank that are starting up a new sub-label over at Image Comics. I think it's called Mad Ghost, and they have done an amazing thing over there, creating this little universe that seems to be growing, and I believe, at least based on what some of the writing has been at the back of their issues, they're picking up and pulling in new writers and artists to help expand this sub-label, and it looks like it's going to be amazing. But Junkyard Joe specifically has probably been my favorite title that's come from this new label. Geiger is also another one, but I have to admit that this Junkyard Joe was really a amazing title that I liked reading, looked forward to it every time it was coming out. Probably one of the first on the stack, you know, that I wanted to read through. And I think we got 3 issues this year, and there was 3 issues in 2022, so we got about half the series at the beginning of this year for the first few months, and I had to put it on my list. If you haven't, I would say that you should definitely check out the series and the whole Geiger verse that's getting created over at Image Comics. Next up at number 6 is The Punisher. The series continued in from 2022 into 2023, and Jason Aaron gave us a amazingly well-written version of the Punisher character. The artwork went between the current day and flashbacks with an artistic style that seemed to pull out, maybe accentuate the writing, and showing the grittiness and darkness that the Punisher grew up in as a child and as a younger version of himself, and then the struggles that he had in the new current time frame that was in the actual content of the series. And if you haven't checked out this run, again, all of these titles on my top 10, I'm probably going to keep saying this over and over, you should go check it out, because really the Punisher, this was one of the, at least in my take, I've read through several series of Punisher, but this has probably been my favorite, and thought it was very well done. There was some crossover with Daredevil. There was some other Marvel comic characters who visited and tried to talk some sense into Frank Castle. And eventually what happened this year in 2023 is Frank Castle ended, and we got a brand new Punisher, which I think is probably controversial to some, but the new series has also been done well, I think. But really that Jason Aaron Punisher is an epic tale of Frank Castle that you should probably go take a look at. Rounding off my top 5 is going to be Detective Comics. There were several Detective Comics stories this year, but the one I'm focusing on is what we got from Ram V in his Gotham opera that he wrote. And I think we are at 20 issues this year from Detective Comics written by Ram V. They started putting them out weekly. There was an annual that came out, and they all tie together in this huge epic tale where there's some back history that's introduced by Ram V of a new family that is historically been in Gotham, and there's crossover with Ra's al Ghul. It was just an amazingly well done epic tale, and then you couple that with some of the artwork styles of Liam Sharp and I think it's Jason Alexander, and you just have this awesome epic tale that is well done. If you didn't read Ram V's Swamp Thing, I think it's comparable to that. I will say there are times where I read through and I'm like, wow, this has you know, a lot of words, very verbose, and that's okay. Sometimes that's a good thing and gives you a lot more context and story, and I think that was the case here. Ram V is definitely a good storyteller, and that's what we got with his run of Detective Comics, which I think ends soon. I don't know how many more issues we're gonna get into 2024, but in 2023 that was definitely something to make it into my top 5. At number 4, we have Phantom Road. This is a Jeff Lemire comic, and Jeff Lemire is one of my favorite authors, and I really liked the Sweet Tooth series. I like it when he does his own art, like he did with his other series this year, Fish Flies. He also delves into horror genre and released several books this year in that genre, but this, while I think has some horror aspects to it, it's really more a sci-fi tale, as these people who are driving a truck, semi-truck, are entering into some kind of alternate reality, and they're doing it through basically transporting it through what seems to be like a convenience store along the highway. And I've said this before on my previous episodes, it reminds me a lot of X-Files, because there is like a federal agent who's mixed into this storyline and who's trying to figure out what's going on. And I just have to say, this has been a great read, and the gritty, dark artwork that is coupled in with Lemire's writing, it just gives a great tale, and I'm looking forward to what we get next year from this series as well. And at number 3, we've got the new Robert Kirkman universe that comes from Hasbro, whether that's G.I. Joe or Transformers, but in this case I'm going with Void Rivals. This is the new series from Robert Kirkman that ties into that new universe. We've had appearances of the Transformers in at least one of the Void Rivals issues, and I have to say I am very happy with this tale again. Apparently I am a sci-fi fan, because this is another sci-fi series that takes a look at the interplay between these two alien races, which actually end up seeming to be crossing over with each other. As you get into the tale, you find out more and more, but it's been a fun read. Again, good art, good story, just another great read, and something you shouldn't pass up if you are a sci-fi fan. And in general, with this new universe building that's going on, it's kind of fun to see how they're going to tie together. And I will say I have been reading some of the other titles that have been released recently, specifically Transformers, which I've seen on a lot of other people's top 10 lists for this year. Danny Warren Johnson is doing a good job on that. It didn't make my list this year, maybe next year, but I really did like that. But really, Void Rivals is one of those top books on my list. And at number 2 is a series that was one of my top series picked from last year, and that is 8 Billion Genies. And with 8 Billion Genies, we had a delay in the publishing of the last couple issues, and we got issues 7 and 8 starting in April of last year. So I was very happy to see that series conclude in what I think was a very well done way. Charles Soule was the author who gave us this amazing tale of what would happen if everyone on the planet got one wish, a genie. And the plot line was just unique and makes you ponder what would happen if this did happen on Earth today, and some of the mayhem in the comics you can see, you know, that could become a reality. And it's just amazing. I think he did a great job writing it. The art style is very unique, and I thought it was also well done. I'm hearing that this title has been sold off for rights for a possible TV or movie series, so that'll be kind of cool if we do end up getting this transcribed into, you know, the smaller big screen. But with that being said, I know this was kind of an interesting pick for such high on my list, because the title mostly came out last year, but it did conclude and give us that final what happens at the very end of all of these wishes. Because if you were reading through the series, you'll know that it started out with what the first few days looked like, what did the first week look like, what did the first month, and eventually you get down to the last book in the series and you get a glimpse into the deep future of where everything finally ended up kind of culminating in the result. And I thought it was a very satisfying end to a really well done series. And at number 1, I'm going with Nocterra. This series has been a fun ride. Tony Daniel on the artwork just provides amazing, awesome art style that gives us what I would call a movie-like feel. It feels like an action movie, and you've got Scott Snyder giving us this tale of post-apocalyptic science fiction that is mixed in with some, I guess, mysticism too. I don't know. It was just a really fun story, and the series kind of delayed for a few months, but it picked back up in March of this year and then went all the way through September with, I think we got issues 12 through 16, so we got 4 issues more this year to wrap it up. And I just think they did such a great job with this series. This is another series that had that little bit of speculation, because again, there was some kind of rights that were acquired for this that will probably or hopefully result in a TV show or movie of some sort. And I could totally see this series becoming a movie, because that's what it felt like I was doing. It felt like one of those times where you're watching a movie and action-packed, and you really get good character development from Scott Snyder. You get to see some one-shot comics that were tied in that kind of gave you even more background, like one of the villains, Blacktop Bill. You get an entire issue dedicated to him, and you find out exactly, you know, why he is what he is. And I don't know, I just have to say that, you know, given everything else that was out, it's really hard to pick that number 1 title. A lot of these are probably equal, but when I sat down and really thought about what I looked forward to reading, I remember this was usually one of those first ones out of the stack from Wednesday. Go read this right away, because I want to know what happens from that cliffhanger from the last issue. So number 1 for 2023 from me is going to be Nocterra. Thanks for watching this special episode of the Pull List Examiner, where I took a look at the top 10 comics for all of 2023. If you are not a subscriber, click subscribe, click like. But really, what I do is I try to put out a weekly video where I take a look at my top choices of what I'm looking for to read when it comes to New Comic Book Day. And that's what I did here on this episode as well, is I tried to look at all of those comic series that I really looked forward to reading the most as I look back over the year of 2023. So thanks again for watching, and remember to read them, bag them, and board them, and we'll see you next time on the Pull List Examiner.